There you go. We'll now call to order the Monday, December 4th, 2023 meeting of the Hayden Planning Commission. Would you please do roll call?
Vice Chair Taylor,
Here.
Commissioner Gibson,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Howard, here, and Commissioner Prickett, Bemis, and Chair Davis is absent, correct?
Yeah.
We do have quorum.
Okay, good. Guess we need to do the pledge, right? Mary, will you lead us in the pledge?
I certainly will. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any additions or corrections to the vote? Do we have any conflicts of interest on the workshop?
No.
Nope. Okay. Everybody look at the consent calendar? Any additions, subtractions, questions?
No? I can make a motion to accept the, are you ready for the consent calendar?
Yep.
To approve the meeting minutes and the EZE 230122 decision that we made. Approve that?
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Johnson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. You've accepted the minutes. Donna, do you have a report for us?
Not really. So you guys wanted updates as far as what was going to city council or being heard at city council. So we don't have anything heard at city council. We do have the joint city council planning and zoning commission workshop next Monday. I sent out very large information. I wanted to make sure you guys had the whole body of the proposed amendments and the minutes of those meetings so you could kind of read them in context. I did try to remove all of the parts and pieces of who may have made those suggested edits so you could just see the suggested edits. So you can kind of make a kind of determination there, and then we'll have that workshop together. On the 12th of December is the city council meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission is tasked with making a report to that meeting. So that'll be Sean, I believe. Are you making that report?
Sure.
On behalf of-
Sure.
Okay.
When is that?
5 o'clock, Tuesday the 12th,
Tuesday, the 12th of December?
December. Yep.
Okay. I bet.
Busy week. It's a busy week.
And that would that be based off of the workshop?
Just updates of what the Planning and Zoning Commission are up to, and
Okay.
yeah, we can talk more.
I can talk more?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the 12th, there's a public hearing on the PACE zone map amendment that the Planning and Zoning had heard previously. And then there is also a request for a possible annexation that's going to City Council to see if they would entertain the idea of an annexation. So those are the two things that you guys have both seen and that you might come back to you.
Okay.
And then we have our regular meeting on the 18th with 2 public hearings.
Will this Hayden Sky be in that meeting?
It will.
Okay. All right. Let's get going with the workshop.
Okay.
Vaughn, did you have anything for us?
No,
No?
Donna did a great job.
You just all rested and relaxed after Puerto Rico?
Yeah, except for last week was miserable, my penance for going on vacation.
No time off goes unpunished,
And that's
Jerry,
for
you know
sure.
that.
Yeah, whenever I go to
That's
town,
right.
something sells.
Oh.
But it's usually a difficult
So
client, they
this-
call me all the time.
This workshop tonight is solely about process, not specific to the PUD that is part of the public hearing that you'll hear in a
Okay.
couple of weeks.
Okay, that's good because I.
The last PUD we did was Hayden Canyon, wasn't it?
No, we've done ones since then.
Which one was the?
We've had several, but we'll talk.
Thank you. That is good.
I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
I was trying to get through all that stuff she sent us. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff here. I
Yeah,
didn't get through
it's a
it
big,
all.
well, it's good that you're gonna get
I
started next
know,
week.
I know, awesome.
2
I got
weeks.
a whole other week. Unfortunately, it's also finals week.
Everybody have a writing object because you will need one.
I do.
You don't have a writing object, you'll have to find you one. Yeah, you need a writing object.
I probably have one.
Here's a writing object. Is that where you're headed for, Keith?
Oh, no problem. Thank you. That's a cool pen.
No, I got them for him.
I got it. Like that color,
Okay.
copper.
Planned unit developments. Idaho State Statute and Title 67, Chapter 65 identifies that as part of or separate from the zoning ordinance, each governing board may provide by ordinance adopted, amended, or repealed in accordance with the notice and hearing procedures for the processing of applications for planned unit development permits. So Title 11, Chapter 6 is the planned unit development code. It's a portion of the zoning title. So a planned unit development in Idaho State Statute, a planned unit development may be defined in a local ordinance as an area of land in which a variety of residential, commercial, industrial, and other land uses are provided for under single ownership or control. Planned unit development ordinances may include, but are not limited to, requirements for minimum area, permitted uses, ownership, common open space, utilities, density arrangements of land uses on a site, and permit processing. Planned unit developments may be permitted pursuant to the procedures for processing applications for special use permits, or in our case, conditional use permits. Following the notice and hearing procedures provided in section 676512 of Idaho Code. Denial of a planned unit development permit or approval of a planned unit development permit with conditions unacceptable to the landowner may be subject to the regulatory taking analysis provided for by section 67803 and consistent with the requirements established thereby. So that's kind of our governing authority on the fact that we can have planned unit developments, which allow for some flexibility in how things are developed. I need my water glass. My water glass. Put some more water in it on the way, who knows? So on page 1 of your code, kind of gone through and summarized portions of that code. We're going to kind of flip back and forth in that code section as we work through our examples, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. So the intent of the planned unit development is to provide greater flexibility in land use and encourage greater design creativity that is generally allowed under conventional standards and development approaches in order to create a better overall development pattern and design. It may include residential or non-residential or combinations of both. It could be individual building sites, or it can be common property that's developed as a functional unit or a neighborhood. It needs to be consistent with the general goals and policies of the city's comprehensive plan and the overall intent of the city's zoning ordinance. And performance standards will be based on the general standards of the underlying zone or zones and the approved master plan of the planned unit development. And standards for a conditional use permit and standards for a subdivision. So we've got lots of standards in here that we'll talk about.
Okay.
purpose and goals. So a planned unit development allows a variety of housing choices and building types balanced with open space and common areas. A more useful pattern of open space and recreation areas is achieved with more convenience to location with commercial, industrial, and service uses. The development pattern preserves and utilizes the natural topography. Think of Hayden Canyon when you're thinking about that a little bit. They preserved the whole canyon area. They preserved, as part of that, they preserved parkland at the bottom that's flat and usable. And so their PUD was built around those natural features of the natural topography. It creates a more efficient use of land, resulting in substantial savings through shorter utilities and streets. It may have a more energy efficient development, minimization of stormwater, a thematic architectural design, so you can tell that you've entered this planned unit development. It might be more beneficial community design and patterns of land use and development. And on page 2, it starts with general requirements. Ownership. Single ownership or control at the time of the final development plan. So you can have multiple people own this property as it kind of starts out the process. But when you get to the final, the end point, it needs to be under a single ownership or control at the time of final plat, of the final development
Right,
plan.
LLC or,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
So does that mean that the actual dwellings are not condominiumized? Well, they are in the fact that they are separate in their utilities and all that stuff, but they're all single ownership?
No, it means that the PUD, as it's developing, it's creating lots, is all under a single ownership. Once the lots have been created, they can be sold off.
Oh,
It could be
okay.
a business too, not necessarily a residence.
No, I understand that, but when it said single ownership, I was like,
Just the developer.
Correct.
so, okay, I understand now.
And they
Thank
can sell
you.
phases too, right? Correct. Like Hayden Canyon sold to Jen, 2 different builders and
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Just not very fun, I should say, about that, but
Sorry.
that's good. So location, it can be in any zone of the city where it can be shown that it meets the standards and requirements of this chapter, chapter 6, this chapter.
Okay,
The uses that are permitted in a planned unit development consist of residential, non-residential, mixed-use buildings, common open space, and then there is a density of development that is identified in the planned unit development code as well. And then on page 7, it kind of identifies the process. How do you get to a final PUD plan? First thing you do is you have to come in for a pre-development meeting. And generally speaking, you come in for more than one. Because you're working through this process, trying to figure out if you've crossed all your I's and dotted all your T's, and if there's some big elephant in the room that somebody may have missed along the way. And then a preliminary development plan comes forward. That's a preliminary PUD. And it moves forward through it has a whole laundry list of application requirements that need to be met with that preliminary PUD. And that's like at the 5,000 foot level that you're looking at this. You know, does it look like it? Does it look like it'll fit? Do the roadways work? Have I met my requirements for open space? It's really at the high level. And it has 4 or 5 standards of approval that are required in the preliminary PUD standards that also point back that you have to meet the conditional use permit standard. The reason you have to meet a conditional use permit standard is because conditional use permits recognize that you're doing something that are slightly different than what is normally allowed. So as an example, churches in a single family residential, you guys have seen that recently with the amendment to the conditional use permit. It's a conditional use permit because it's slightly different than the norm and it has some additional mitigation that you need to do with it. Same reason with a planned unit development, it's different than the than the norm, and you're gonna have some conditions that are gonna need to be addressed. So again, 5,000 foot level, it's a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission, a written recommendation to City Council, and a public meeting with the City Council. And the findings are highlighted in yellow, because that's the part that we are in this process with what you're gonna be hearing at the public hearing in a couple of weeks.
So this is where we are in the process. Okay.
So then, after, assuming that City Council approves it and says, yes, we think you've got a plan, we think you can move forward with this, then they come back and they apply, meaning all of those much finer, detailed points, all the way down to the first phase, generally speaking, of the first phase of the subdivision. They've got all of the kind of the nuts and the bolts. They know that the sewer will flow, and they know that the water will get there, and the fire hydrants will all work, and all of those things are in there, and then they apply for that. And we go back through and make sure that they've met the conditions in the preliminary PUD that have been recommended to get to the final PUD. And then we have another public hearing with Planning and Zoning. So we get to present and show that they've met those intents, and then you'll meet, it has like 2 pages at the end that are not highlighted because we're not there yet, of different standards of approval that need to be met, in addition to the subdivision standards of approval.
So our standards of approval change through the process or build on each other through the process?
Both.
Okay. Okay.
Mostly because you're doing, your standards of approval right now are at the 5,000 foot level.
Okay.
Your standards of approval at final PUD and at subdivision are more at the 40 foot level. And you're right in there paying attention to how it's getting built.
So I don't even know if it's an appropriate question at this point. But if at the 5,000 foot level, we can see how the intent is meeting the standards of approval, but as we come down, do we still have the ability to go, no, I'm not sure you're meeting the standards of approval here
You have to meet the standards of approval that are at the final PUD.
that level? Okay,
Correct?
You are correct.
Okay.
okay,
So then that's a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission.
okay.
Goes back.
And I will add, that's why it's really important to be prepared and pay very close attention to what's being asked for at the preliminary development phase,
Okay.
so that you really are in tune with the deviations from code that are being requested, that's the time at that preliminary phase to say, I'd be more comfortable if, they made some adjustments here, or made adjustments there, or moved the open space, whatever feels like it meets the standards of approval better than what they've brought to you, because you don't want it to come back at final development plan time, and then you're raising issues you didn't raise before.
Right, that's
Yeah,
really
so
why I asked the
It's really
question.
important to be very well prepared and have reviewed all of the materials when they come in for public hearing on the preliminary development plan.
Okay. That's why you gave us weeks in advance. Yes, it is a lot of material.
So the public meeting with City Council, again, and then those standards of approval are in 1165D.
It also really helps your council when you've had a robust discussion about it at the public hearing phase.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And then at the end of all of that, then we write a written decision and a master development agreement for both the PUD and the first phase of the subdivision. And those go back to council for approval, and then they can submit construction, assuming it's approved, they can submit construction plans for the first phase of the subdivision. Okay, just that's big picture of this code. Okay, so now we're going to do some application, because I'm an application person. So I'm showing you some general information about PUDs that have been approved. These are all PUDs that have been approved in the city previously. Okay? So this site is in the single-family residential R1 zone. And we know that the single-family R1 zone has no common wall houses. We know that the minimum lot sizes are 8,250 square feet. And we know that the setbacks from the garage in the front are 25 feet, a 25-foot rear yard setback, a 10-foot side, and a 15-foot flanking street setback. So if you were to look at this and somebody were to come in for a pre-development meeting and they were to say, hey, I want to build this, I'm in the R1 zone, what do you suppose we'd say?
Can't.
You've got a lot of common wall homes there.
We do. So are those allowed outright in the single-family
No.
R1 zone? You're not.
With the lot size.
And your lot sizes are different, and your setbacks are different.
So are my lot sizes, and you might be able to read it smaller than up here, but like this lot size is 5,900 square feet. Does that work in the
No,
single-family residential zone?
no.
No. So I'm going to say that the density that's allowed here fits this piece of property. I'm going to say that in an R1 zone, it would still fit to build these. Not suggesting it will, but I'm going to just throw that out. We'll say it does.
Okay.
Okay? And if the density fits and the kinds of construction of homes does not, can they build it? Yeah. So they need a planned unit development. Okay, so I want you to look on, well, first, I want you to turn the page from your drawing, and I want you to put all the reasons why it doesn't meet the current code. Okay?
That doesn't work.
Pretty much just with that information that's up there.
Oh, there it is, there's us looking for.
Follow along here. Okay, so now I want you to look at page 2 of your code for your PUD under residential. And it says that residential, at the bottom of page 2, it says residential developments, which we've established this is all residences, may include single-family and multi-family dwelling units, such as townhomes, garden apartments, common wall single-family, other cluster housing, and multi-family dwellings as separately deeded lots, condominium ownership, or as a lease or rental housing. So does this, as it's proposed on this piece of property, meet the definition of a residential PUD?
Yes.
Yes. And I'm going to leave it at that. We're just starting off with definitions.
Yeah.
All right, so let's hit the next one. So this one is a split zoned, single piece of property, split zone piece of property that is got a commercial on this side. And it was zoned, at the time that this PUD was approved, it was zoned residential multifamily. So just out of conversation's sake, this is, as proposed, these look like fourplexes, which they're not. They're like, this is like sixplexes, eightplexes, there's sixplexes, I think there's 6s and 6s, this is an 8, there's a duplex back here, here's a 4-plex. Okay, so it's a mixture of plexes.
Right.
Plexes in there.
Multiplex.
Multiplex building, yeah. With commercial kind of in the front end. And it was zoned that way, commercial with residential multifamily. So if it was zoned, if that whole piece of property was zoned mixed use, could they construct it as shown? Duplexes, triplexes, 4plexes, 5s, 6s, 7s, and 8s.
This is under maximum 12.
Well, no,
Per
isn't it?
acre.
Where does the
Oh, it's
triplex?
Per acre, so no.
Well, this is like 7 acres.
Oh, it is? Oh, I'm sorry, I was just looking at the lots, okay.
Say that again?
Okay, so we have in mixed use, mixed residential.
Didn't we have a
Mixed use is
percentage
the
of commercial
3, isn't it?
residential that we had to meet or something in our mixed use? Oh, we didn't put that in there.
So the only thing that would trip this up from being in mixed use is that mixed use has to be 4 dwelling units or more per building.
Oh, so
So
you
these
could those
duplexes?
duplexes have to be out.
Would not work. That'd be a good reason to have a PUD, I'm not sure. I might reconstruct how I was building those and not have as it would be an allowed outright use if it had, if it was zoned a mixed use, it would be allowed outright. But it's not. So it's 2 zones, commercial and residential multifamily. And so it has 2 parts that has to meet in the PUD code. So if you go back to page 2, bottom of page 2, let's see what it says about residential. Does it meet that first sentence about residential that I rattled off earlier? Yeah. Okay, so then turn the page over and go to non-residential. And a PUD includes commercial uses, commercial buildings and establishments, light industrial uses, recreation uses, etc. Those uses shall be planned as groups having common parking areas and common ingress/egress points. Does it meet that?
Well, we have common parking here.
And it talks about side yard and rear yard setbacks in the non-residential and applying that. Talks about the plan has to have good internal traffic circulation, adequate landscaping, buffering. Can't really see any of that from this map, but it's possible. All areas are designed for future expansion or not intended for immediate development shall be landscaped or otherwise maintained. So those would be conditions that you would add on to the design. It says up to 10% of the gross land area of a non-residential PUD may be utilized as another use. Residential, industrial, public, quasi-public uses that are not allowed within the underlying zone. We don't have to worry about that because the commercial is only in the commercial and the residential family is only in the residential
If it
family.
was all residential, say if it was 10 acres, you could do 1 acre of commercial within that zone.
That's correct.
Okay.
Say that again?
So it was 10 acres of residential R1, and they had 1 acre of commercial within that?
Within it, though,
Yep.
not on the edge,
Well,
within it.
If the whole thing's, underlying zoning's all R1, you could do 10%, you could do 1 acre of commercial in that per PUD. Is that correct? Yeah.
Okay.
So there aren't any mixed-use buildings, so it doesn't fall under that category. Let's go at the bottom of page 4. In a planned unit development, you're required to have open space.
Right.
A minimum of 10% of the gross land area in any PUD project shall be reserved for consolidated areas of common open space for the occupants of the area being developed. This land can be dedicated for public use, Coeur d'Alene, city, schools, arts, parks, may also be considered to meet this requirement. Land dedicated for public right-of-way, private streets, stormwater management, utility purposes, required landscaping buffers, setback areas, green belts, and/or common parking areas shall not be considered open space for the purposes of this requirement unless the PUD is less than 5 acres, which is that first one that you saw, which is why I didn't want you to get all confused at that.
Okay.
Because it's less than 5 acres. In size, in which case that 10% open space can be combined with the required landscape buffer, the perimeter setback area, and green belts.
Okay.
So I guess Hayden Canyon, the charter school, counted as part of their open space.
Yes.
It does? Okay.
In solely non-residential PUDs. So this doesn't fit that because this is what? Commercial and residential. If you had a PUD that was only non-residential,
Like
Or
a
in
business park or
areas-
something like that?
or in areas of a PUD where you had non-residential butted up against another zone adjacent to them that was non-residential. Then the 25-foot setback and type 2 landscape buffer, walking paths, and other features that contribute to that campus-like effect may be counted as open space. And where a non-residential PUD abuts a non-residential use, the 25-foot PUD setback may be waived as long as all other buffer and landscape requirements are met. So a type 2 landscaping buffer is 20 feet wide unless you've got a 6-foot tall fence, in which case you can shrink it down to 10 feet wide, and it includes trees and shrubs. So the gist is that you're literally creating a visual and sound separation around the entire perimeter of your PUD unless you're a non-residential butted up against a non-residential.
Right.
So every PUD has to have open space. In this case, this open space was in the center of the PUD. And these, although they have road names, because our road, our addressing code requires that if you have 2 or more addresses on a driveway, it needs to have a road name for emergency services.
Identification, yeah.
But this is actually a parking area, so this is circulation. It's not a roadway.
Oh,
And that was part of, it's a private internal circulation area with parking around the park. And that was one of the exceptions to the public streets that was requested as part of this planned unit development, deviating from the norm.
So they've got to
And
maintain the
approved.
road, though. So they have to
Pardon me?
maintain the road, the city doesn't have to maintain that road.
That was correct. All right, and then page 5, density of development. Not going to spend a ton of time in this section, but we'll take a look at it. So one of the cool things about planned unit developments is that the city may get a park, or the school might get a school site, or there's some great thing that happens that, get some great opportunities for the city. The flip side is that the developer oftentimes is looking for a little bit more density than what they're allowed to have outright. That's not always the case. It's important to note that it's not always the case. So the minimum lot size in a PUD has provisions that the minimum lot sizes can be waived for the underlying zone because it's all based on density.
On the entire
That's right.
acreage.
All based on density. Correct.
Okay.
So, density of residential developments, where the minimum lot size for the underlying zones are waived, the average density of the development for the PUD shall be equal to the base density of the underlying zone. So we're going to go back, because we've got this one up, we're going to go back to Vice Chair Taylor's sentence that what is this, 12, okay? So at 12 units per acre, They've put in a park, some common areas, some playground equipment, but we're gonna leave it at the base of 12, just for consistency's sake. And so this is about 6.2, we're gonna say 6 acres, just because it's easy to multiply. And so 6 times 12 would give you 72 dwelling units per acre. Doesn't mean that they have any minimum lot size, it just means they can't have more than 72 dwelling units per acre, because that's how many acres they have in the project, and the maximum density that they could have based on a mixed-use zone that we were playing around with, would get you to 72, 6 times 12. Now, let's see if we can get to some density bonuses. So the maximum density bonus you can ever get in a planned unit development is 20%. So what's 20% of 72?
7.2.
That's 10%.
14.4.
So it's really 14, because I never roll up, I always roll down.
Okay.
If it's 1460, you got 15?
14.
Okay.
Get 6/10 of a housing, last time I checked. So you could go from 72 dwelling units plus 14 more is 86. So no matter what configuration you were to do in here, you could never get more than 86 dwelling units with this PUD, with our PUD code. You could only go up to 20%, no matter what rendition you do of this. So let's look at how you could potentially get some density bonuses. You could have an incorporation of community art in common areas. You could design some plazas. You could have some public meeting areas, or you could preserve some unique natural feature, but that could get you 10%. You could, go ahead.
What would we be considering? Are we talking if they put up a gazebo, that's
No.
enough?
No. And that really, they would have to come to you and show how they've met this intent.
Okay, but I'm asking because I want to know what,
I don't have a specific.
well, I don't either. I don't either. I'm just saying, does that mean
It also
it
depends
has to be
on-
something more substantial than a gazebo? Let me ask it that way. As a meeting place.
Potentially, depending again on the size of the planned unit development that you're looking at. If you're back at that 5-acre planned unit development that we showed first, at this one,
Right.
maybe a gazebo makes sense. But if you're looking at one that's more like this, maybe that doesn't make sense.
So here I
Order
would
of magnitude.
be
a little bit
expecting
here.
more of a clubhouse.
Potentially. Again, it's a case-by-case kind of conversation.
Okay.
And it's a presentation by the developer of how what they're offering is beneficial to the community as a whole in trade for
Density.
these deviations from code and density bonuses.
Yep.
Okay.
So the second one is a dedication of land to public entities for required community services. For example, fire, police, interstate transportation facilities, without reimbursement for land costs. That's a 10% bonus.
Oh, okay.
It's like a double bonus, because you also get your common open space area.
Correct. The third method could be that housing that addresses special needs populations, which accounts for not less than 10% of the total number of housing units within the development. So if we were back at that, you get 7 dwelling units for your density bonus of 10%, then 7 of those dwelling units need to meet this special needs housing population. So that might be a ADA accessible home, or
We've seen projects like that.
yeah. The fourth method is a dedicated affordable workforce housing as it's defined in here, and that could get you a 20% density bonus. So 14 dwelling units would need to be part of that, basically your density bonus that you would get would have to be for workforce housing. And then the fifth method is a provision of significant recreational area improvements as identified in the park strategic plan without reimbursement by park impact fees. And that's a 10% bonus. So you put two of those together and get to 20%. Or if you do the workforce housing, you can just get to the 20%. But you can't go more than that. So 20% is the max, period. Okay. All right, so this is a third site. So we're going to play some what ifs. This is a 3.027 acre site. And if this property were zoned commercial, and you had a retail office complex here on the corner, and you had 12 condominiums, residential condominiums here, 4 residential condominiums proposed here, and 4 more proposed here, could you build them outright in the commercial zone?
No residential in commercial zone.
Correct. If you were to build these in a planned unit development, could you build these condominiums and meet that, what is that percentage that you could have that is not the underlying zone?
Isn't, I'm sorry,
That's right, go ahead.
10%.
I was just gonna say the building on the top right, isn't that too big for this?
This one?
Yeah, isn't it greater than 10% for, because that's the commercial one, right?
It is the commercial one, so it fits the
that's the
fact that this is a
commercial loan.
commercial lot. So it could totally be built.
But if you're putting the residences in it, I thought you said that the commercial part could only be 10%.
I said that if you have a zone that is a zone that doesn't allow for the use, then only up to 10% of the
But because
underlying
this is
zone.
commercial.
Right, so it's only the 10% can be the residential, not the other way around.
So if
Because it's
this,
commercial zone.
if this is greater than 10%, could you build it with a PUD? If it's greater than 10% and the zone underneath is commercial,
No.
no. Okay, so let's flip it.
So there they got to do a zone change on it.
Potentially, yeah. So let's flip it. Let's make this single-family residential. It's a single-family residential lot. And they want to put an office retail on the corner.
No, because the condominiums wouldn't fit in the R1.
Correct. And the whole thing doesn't work
The whole
because
thing doesn't
nothing
work.
works with the underlying zone.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Okay. How about if it was zoned mixed use? Would you need a PUD?
I don't think so.
Yes, because well, no, because it's 4 or more.
And maximum of 12.
Then, yeah.
Dwelling units per acre. But you're well below that at 3 acres, correct? Okay. So how about if I was in the CBD? So the central business district, it's commercially zoned, but it has an overlay of CBD, central business district. Could I build this like it is, or would I need to get a PUD?
Yeah, because you can't put residential in the CBD, right?
Absolutely can put CBD, residential in the CBD.
Okay.
You can put it in the 2nd and 3rd floors.
Oh, yeah,
And
okay.
you can put it in as a secondary use to a primary use of commercial. in the
Okay.
center.
Okay,
Totally allowed outright.
okay.
It seems like it's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's play devil's advocate just briefly here in the central business district. So one of the design requirements of a central business district is that 15% of the gross area within the central business district has to be landscape. And of that 15%, no more than a third of that, no more than 5% of that 15% can be hardscape, like sidewalks. So if this couldn't meet that 15% maximum, would it make sense for them to go through a PUD?
Oh, sorry.
To deviate from that requirement?
Right.
Probably not. more than likely they'd hunt for a variance to allow them to do something different. Only if this lot had some geographic, some reason that made it remarkably different than every other lot in the CBD. So the number one problem that folks, not problem, but the number one development that hits when you're looking at non-residential sites are parking. So when I look at that, I'm like, I don't think there's enough parking.
Right.
If there are garages in these condominium units, maybe there's enough parking. But you've got 20 condo units, that's 40 parking spaces off the top, because each one of those needs 2, period. And a single car garage does not count toward that parking requirement.
Right.
So if there's single car garages under those condos, you're not gonna get any credit for those parking spaces.
If you do a double car, do you get just one?
Just one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the office retail, if that's 2 stories, we're gonna say it's 2 stories, then you need 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet of office and retail on top of the 40 parking spaces. I think they might be pushing it. So you're either gonna have to reduce your uses, or you're gonna have to figure out how to get some exceptions to allow for this to build. And the way you would get to the exceptions is through a planned unit development. You see the difference?
Okay.
You guys wanna take notes? Should I stop for a minute?
You're suggesting we can vote.
I am.
That makes sense too, because the PUD process is a lot harder to do, so there should be a good reason why that'd be correct.
No. There has to be some reason at the end of the day that makes any sense.
And Hayden Canyon was kind of obvious, 'cause it was a variety of uses that they wanted and housing types.
And it was large,
Yeah.
and it had a big ravine in the middle.
So in that case, the PUD made sense because in order to preserve the uniqueness of its topography and its value to the community of its topography, in not changing the topography in order to
And
build.
it allowed you to utilize the density that could have been constructed in that area
In there.
elsewhere throughout the PUD, at a much lower density, but yes. They didn't go after density bonuses. Except with workforce housing, and they haven't been able to figure out how to get that to work with a funding mechanism to make that happen. So they've been pretty much capped at 2.5 dwelling units per acre.
So is it the, what makes the workforce housing piece so difficult to
There's a whole
achieve?
section of code in there that can help explain it. But,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll go through that then.
Any good questions for us?
Okay.
Okay. So this PUD was approved in 1993. And it was approved so that at the time that it was approved, all of this was commercial and all of this was single family. But we're gonna utilize it a little bit, play around with it. So I'm gonna say that, she's gonna love me in there. I'm gonna be down here and shopping yet. We're gonna say that everything this way is commercial. And we're gonna say that everything in here
Multi-use.
is mixed use. And we're gonna call this mixed residential. This could be interesting. And we're gonna say that on every lot that has an X on it, is a duplex.
Is a duplex?
Is a duplex. Confuse the heck out of you.
Okay, so I already am concerned about which zoning takes precedence as the underlying zone when you've got so many zones.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. You're correct. So in the old code in 1993.
Doesn't matter, but you're correct.
You are correct, but we'll get there. Hold that thought.
I get that.
So I'm gonna change I'm gonna confuse the heck out of things a little. Minus my X's, we'll go back to the other one. So here's a duplex. Here's a duplex, 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 duplex. And then we didn't have a short plat code, so the dark ages of the 1990s, if somebody wanted to split their lot, they walked themselves down to the county and filed. We found out later. It's lots of fun. So I'm gonna go back to this guy. That's why you've got red dots kind of down those lots. It's because they actually got smaller, substantially smaller. So when you're looking at the zones and you're looking at the uses, you have to figure out if the use that's being proposed is trumping that 10% conversation. So in my world, are duplexes allowed in commercial at all? No. So this is like 100% of the commercial is going toward duplexes. Correct?
That's what you're showing us,
Sort
yeah.
of, yeah. And are duplexes allowed at all in mixed use? No. Are duplexes allowed at all in mixed residential?
Yes.
Yes. Are single-family residential allowed at all in mixed use? No. Are they allowed at all in mixed residential? Are they allowed at all in commercial? Okay. All right, that's good. We're going to come back to this. We're going to go to the next one and come back to this.
We passed the pretest.
So the whole thing's jacked.
That one, that is.
No, it's
Three
not.
though.
That's fine. So let's look at the last one. We're going to come back to that one in a minute. This one kind of helps explain it a little bit more. So in 2007, in preparation of a PUD in 2008, which expired, I might add, died for lack of a second, they came in and they did a zone map amendment. So if you look at the 2007 zone map, you'll see this rectangular piece of property. Ignore this piece over here.
Okay.
But it is light industrial, so that was kind of important, that's why it was there. Light industrial, commercial, residential, suburban. They asked for those.
Residential suburban.
Residential, suburban. And then they came forward with a 6-phase PUD that was approved. And they had 14 lots that were commercial. These, 14 lots. And they had 14 lots that were light industrial. And they had 4 lots that were multifamily. I don't have green, that's not very helpful. Black either. Whoop. The rest was single-family residential, except for the open space. which was
Not much.
not my phone,
No,
Not yours.
not mine.
No.
You. The whole project site is 78 acres. So that leaves you 39 acres of residential, and it leaves you 39 acres of non-residential, correct? First, so good?
Is that picture supposed to fit in that?
It is.
Okay, but here we have our commercial and light industrial here.
I understand that.
Okay,
You're absolutely correct.
But they did a PUD, so you got 10% usage in those other zones.
So you got 39 acres of residential suburban, and you got 39 acres of commercial.
okay.
So you got 3.9 something else.
So I have 1.5 acres of multifamily. And I have 35.26 acres of R1. Correct? And if I add those together, I end up with like 36.77 acres. I'm well within my residential suburban. And 10% of residential suburban is 3.9, so my 1.5 acres that is kind of multifamily-ish totally fits. And then I have 6.49 acres of commercial. Well, that totally fits because it's commercial. And then I have 8.26 acres of light industrial. Neither one of those is light industrial, is it? The single-family residential isn't, and the commercial isn't, but 8.26 acres divided by 78 acres, whole thing, right? Whole thing, either one of them is equal to 10.5%. So, this 10% is allowed outright as part of the PUD deviation. And this 0.5%, they attributed to an exception and allowed it outright with conditions. So it does not matter where the zone is.
It doesn't.
Just matters that you don't blow out of the zone. Now, in 1993, I can't speak for how the heckin' gone they approved it, that many single-family residentials for the duplexes and made that all work in the commercial, because it's a commercial use. It's important that when you're looking at it as wholes, not as, oh, it doesn't fit here because that's not what it is. I don't care about that.
Doesn't matter.
Based on your percentages, and based on what happens with the underlying area.
Okay.
Okay?
So you're looking at the totality as opposed to this little section or this little, okay.
Yeah. That's all I really have.
What?
It is. I said an hour.
It's
I said
6:01.
an hour, yeah.
Did
Do you guys have questions for me? So when you are reviewing the staff review that's out there, it's out on the website for anybody that wants to look at it for the public hearing in 2 weeks, make sure you guys are not talking to each other.
Right.
You're not talking to anybody else. Right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
No ex parte communication.
Don't want any of that to go on.
So
You
is,
can always come call me, absolutely.
and this is the packet that you sent out a couple of weeks ago for us to start reading because it's
Right.
humongous. Okay.
Not the one that I sent out last Friday that's also humongous.
That's
that is
double
for-
humongous.
That is for next Monday, that's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is double humongous. Okay.
And then I'll send out another memo next week with public comments for
For the PUD.
that way, then you have another public hearing that same night. Yeah,
Okay, we have two then.
2 public hearings.
And
Okay.
and
That's gonna be a long
hopefully
night.
tonight's presentation helps make the packet.
Makes more sense as a packet.
Yeah.
Well,
And talk about, it, but
yeah,
the.
no, I know that. No, it's
Just giving you some background.
it's giving us the background.
I'm hoping
Yeah.
it's explaining the code.
And it'll explain the why of the ask.
Right. Well, no, I could kind of get the ask, because I could see the whole picture.
I'm not talking about it.
No, I'm not talking about it just in general, but knowing what to be watching for
Is it?
Yeah.
Making sure.
is
it comes to the
helpful.
city hall.
This is why it
Plus, this is just boring, this is just something you guys have to do.
It is.
A lot of
I think
it.
it's supposed to be slimming.
Okay.
All right?
you go.
Does that help?
It does, yes, because this is very complex, so I appreciate
I like to wear
the extra help on it.
it. Where?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Any other questions for Don?
Are you in a daze being so
No.
new on it?
I'm seeing and just
I
going
am.
over everything.
You are? Okay. Yeah.
I guess then meeting is adjourned.
Oh, hey.
Do I need a motion for that?
No.
Okay.
Okay, these will help, thank you.